Locked On Sports Atlanta on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Into the Hawks POSTCAST, your home for the best Atlanta Hawks talk. It's quick hitting local insight after every game. You can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra. Batiste. Alongside me is NBA and college basketball analyst DeShaun Tate. The Hawks POSTCAST is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, DeShaun, this was one of those games where we were able to see the Hawks weather the storm. We'll talk about that and our takes on the Hawks opening their homestand with a solid win over the Magic, 127-112, the final. And your take was their approach made all the difference.
All the difference. And what a wonderful feeling it is, not only for the Hawks to be able to get a win, but for the Hawks to get a win at home.
Yes.
And a convincing win, by the way, a primetime game. All the NBC and all the fancy stuff going on is just a really good feeling. Especially considering our allegiances that we have to our collegiate teams. Probably a bit too many Wolverines and Blue Devils out on the floor tonight. Other than that, I think the Hawks looked extremely good. Quite a bit of fouls, I think, that were caught in this game, a total of 54. So it seemed like a really slow, grinded out, however, yet physical game. We'll talk about how physical that was a little bit later. But I think everything started with this team, Tenitra, between the ears, just the mentality. I think I mentioned a few games ago about how, I really wanted them to get to a point where they played a little angry basketball. I think sometimes last year I was feeling like, I don't know, you get this whole, what is it? The, Southern hospitality thing. Everybody's nice. Everything's rosy all the time. And sometimes you got to punch people in the face and let them know that the South got something to say. Both teams tonight from the South, but the Atlanta Hawks got the better of the Orlando Magic. And I really felt like they needed to get first of all, a fast start. I think that was probably my most important thing for this team. They scored 32 points in the first quarter. Risacher with 11 of the team's first 13. I thought that was fantastic because that I felt like really needed to be key for this team to get a win. They did that, and hopefully it can carry on to the next one.
Yeah, I think you make a great point about the fact that the Hawks came out aggressive. There have been a couple games early in the season where we saw them kind of start off slow and kind of wondered, okay, well, why is it that the Hawks are kind of not picking up the pace or not putting themselves in position to where they have to pick up the pace, like start off with that pace. And I think they did a really good job with that. I mean, when you think about the fact that, for example, we talked a little bit about transition points, if you will, and the Hawks played pretty well in transition, and not just in transition across the entirety of the game. But I think, again, going back to what you said, starting off, kind of setting the tone of this game and saying that we're going to play with the pace we want to play with, we're going to play with the style we want to play with. However, if you decide, Orlando, that you want to punch and you want to be a little physical, like, we got to get back for you. So I did like to see a little get back from the Hawks. I thought that they did a good job of standing toe-to-toe, 10 toes down, standing on business, whatever cliche you would like to use. I felt like they really did all of the above tonight. And particularly, I felt like, hey, my take on why this game in large part turned out how it did was because putting bad boy Bane on Risacher, bad decision. Bad decision. But before I talk about Zach, can I go back to what you talked about with the physicality? Because Desmond Bane committing a dirty foul, pulling Onyeka Okongwu down when he was airborne, slapping the ball down on him while he was down. Now, granted, Bane got a flavor one, got a technical, got ejected, would not leave the arena, DeShaun, would not leave the arena. So dude ends up, being escorted by his own security, and we're probably going to get word from the NBA once we get the officials report that we get in terms of the fouls called, whether or not they were appropriate, whether or not they were accurate in their call on a flagrant one, for example. But also, I'm sure we'll hear from the association that he got suspended as well. So before I go further into my take, it looks like you got a little something to say about Desmond Bane and his activity tonight.
No, for sure. I mean, it was obvious. Like, we don't need to go back to the cameras and go back to the
Right.
replay center out in Secaucus, New Jersey to take a look at we don't need to do all that.
No.
He pulled the man down, didn't even make a basketball play, wasn't going
Nope.
for the ball, pulled him down on the ground. There was a little bit of a shove to the ground on his way down, plus dropping the basketball, slamming it down on top of him, pointing to the finger of another player. I can only imagine probably making threatening comments. I can't imagine he's saying, "Hey, your haircut looks nice today." Like it was a bit too way more than too much. I really felt like not only what are we doing here for so long, but even more so like this can't be anything minus an ejection. Like I just felt like it was just that. I don't know about gruesome injury, but or gruesome, play or whatever. But it was more than enough. I thought that it was very unacceptable, very distasteful, and that's not just because of somebody from Orlando doing that to a Hawks player. I would have felt the same way if it was a Hawks player doing that to someone from Orlando. That just wasn't the case on tonight. I thought that was a disgusting play because this is a very tight. And I'm sorry, I get long winded, but it's a very tight knit community. There's only so many guys that can play has played at this level, and you want to try and keep guys safe for the most part, the best that you can, and show sportsmanlike conduct. And from that standpoint, it just really didn't look good. It looked extremely, extremely dirty.
Yeah, I would have to agree, but nonetheless, Zaccharie Risacher, and he of a very light foot, we'll call, because we know that Zaccharie Risacher, and granted, that particular foul was on Onyeka Okongwu. But again, you got Zaccharie Risacher, which he is 200 pounds, probably soaking wet if we're being honest about it. Yeah. But he stood tall. He stood tall against Desmond Bane tonight, and you really saw him show. Maybe you could argue, DeShaun, that this may have been Zaccharie Risacher's best game because, as you mentioned, 11 points in the first quarter alone, 3 rebounds, 16 points by halftime. Zaccharie Risacher ultimately finishes with 21. I know you appreciate perfect from the free throw line, 7 of 14 from the field. And again, complimenting the Hawks continuing to play well, shooting from the field 55.6% tonight, but also Zaccharie Risacher, not bad, 3 of 8 from 3. And I just love the fact that he continues to grow and continues to evolve his game. And I think we really saw that from him tonight.
Probably the only thing I didn't love about him tonight was he had 2, well, it may not have been, I feel like they were both alley-oop reverse dunks and he missed them both, which I kind of rolled my eyes at. But if that's
I was
the worst,
trying not to.
I know you were. I have to be the one. I'm always have to be the one, and I'm gonna be that. But if that's the worst thing that you can say about a guy on tonight, which I mean, look, I know it's only been 8 games in going into this game. And we've seen so many really good flashes, win, lose, or draw on the result card. But so many good flashes from so many other players. But we hadn't quite seen Zaccharie Risacher heard his name or called his name a ton of times all the way up until tonight's game. So it was good to see him kind of get involved early and often, kind of feel like he had a little bit of a breakout game of his first of the season, if you will. And it's just really nice to be able to see the Hawks get a convincing win. And I think that they may have a little something going for themselves and going into the next game. I think they got Toronto coming up.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that this is the type of game where, it was very close in game 1. It was 111 to 107. The Hawks did prevail. But ultimately, I was thinking that this was going to be a little bit closer of a game. So, yeah, I like what we saw from the Hawks. I like the fact that, the Orlando Magic went on a couple runs. We'll talk about one of them on the other side. But certainly, I love the fact that the Hawks were able to withstand those runs because I think that shows, hey, this team is gelling, this team is growing up, and this team is learning night in and night out how to win. Now, the turning point was just what we said. The Magic did go on a couple runs, but what the Hawks did was stay the course. This episode of our Hawks Postcast is brought to you by Game Time. Basketball season is officially here, and nothing beats being in the arena for those opening games. But let's be real, getting tickets can be a total headache between waiting in queues, surprise fees, and prices that jump right before checkout. It's easy to get frustrated, but all you want to do is cheer on your team. That's where Game Time comes in, the app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NBA tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. So you might go to Game Time to grab seats for the Atlanta Hawks, or maybe if you're traveling out of town, another team, or maybe even when the Hawks go back on the road. And it couldn't be any simpler because you can have great seats in minutes, and you'll love what you see is what you pay. I mean, no hidden fees at checkout. That's a good look. And their zone deals are a game changer. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Now, terms do apply, but that's code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, and go. This episode of our Hawks Postcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. So right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel. Again, even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks, and you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So DeShaun, those pesky Orlando Magic players said, hey, we're down, but we're not out. So the Hawks had a commanding double-digit lead. As we talked about earlier, the Hawks were able to get out of the gates early and dominate, outscoring at Orlando 32-23. And then all of a sudden, it was the pesky second quarter that happened where Orlando came back, cut that lead to 4, but then the Hawks woke up, and that was the turning point.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
You know, DeShaun, we know that there is a saying in the league that no lead is safe, and we kind of saw that play out tonight with the Orlando Magic, except when the Magic went on a 21-9 run, that was over maybe that last portion of the second quarter, then all of a sudden things turned back the Hawks' way. And the Hawks then went on a 12-1 run to end the second quarter. And really and truly, the Hawks never looked back. Third quarter, outscored Orlando just by 4 points, 34-30. And although Orlando outscored them in the fourth quarter, the game at that point was called because of the way that the Hawks were able to stave off the Magic's attempt at a comeback in that second quarter.
And that was something that was so important to Tenitra because, you know, there had been many instances where we've seen the Hawks either, you know, trail really early, which has been most cases this season, and then have to kind of fight their way back into the game, or have a pretty good, substantial, somewhat lead, and then the opposition finds a way. Like, we never really get a full 4 quarters from the Atlanta Hawks. And with the exception of runs, that is just inevitable and just going to happen because it's basketball and it's professional players and everything else. I think that, you know, it was really good to see the Atlanta Hawks go out there and eventually get the stops. A lot of times when you have such situations like this where you just, it's basketball. Teams are going to go on runs. It's going to be about how you respond, how you reply to those runs. And you can't just, you know, sit on your hands or anything like that. Like you have to go out there and you have to be able to be resilient, in which I believe that the Hawks were doing. They kept the same energy. They didn't, you know, panic. They didn't, you know, hit the reset. You know, they just hit the reset button and say, okay, let's treat this like, you know, we have a home to defend. And that's exactly what they did. And they made sure to make a mark, which I thought was kind of key. You can't let their big three of Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, and Desmond Bane go for, like, you know, a combination of like 70 of the team's points. They ended up finishing with 49 collectively. I know Bane got tossed early, but within that particular run to end the first half. They go on a 14-1 run, talking about the Atlanta Hawks. Within that, the Orlando Magic had shot 36% from the field going into the half, 25% from three, and 3 turnovers, 4 fouls, had picked up far too many. And it just gave the Atlanta Hawks way too much confidence to say, you know what, we're just really not going to look back at this, and we're going to keep our foot on the gas. I'm really glad that they did, because ultimately that's what catapults that confidence to going into the next game.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I love that you pointed out the offensive side of the ball and what the Hawks were able to do. And I liked what they were able to do defensively. And just it's like what Willie Carswell said. And thank you, as always, for joining us. The defense really led to the offense for the Hawks, because when you look at that second quarter, and granted, Orlando did a couple things to shoot themselves in the foot. When you are shooting 67% from the free throw line, that's probably going to mean that at some point your comeback stalls. But give the Hawks a whole lot of credit. Give them a whole lot of credit for being able to do one thing and one thing only that I'm talking about right now. And then I'll go into my other comment, but it's the defensive rebounding, because that's been a bit of a challenge for the Hawks so far this season, giving all of those second chance opportunities. And for them to have out-rebounded the Magic, to me, was very, very impressive. And for them to have done it, even though it's a small margin, 12-10, you got to look down the box score and see that 10 of those rebounds were on defense. That's the effort that keeps a team from being able to pull off a comeback, pull ahead, when you're able to do things like that. Same quarter on the defensive side of the ball, powered by the pickpocket himself, Dyson Daniels. But the team had 3 steals, if you will. And Dyson Daniels actually had his steals. Check that later on in the game. This was actually Porzingis, Kennard, and Jalen Johnson. So what I like about that is the fact that they got that kind of defensive output that you usually do look for from the Hawks backcourt, particularly Dyson Daniels.
That's right.
And we ended up getting it out of the
front
big.
court.
So I think that's another place that you can be very, very impressed with them on the defensive side. And one more thing too, of course, whenever you have the opportunity to block shots, I think that goes back to what you were talking about as far as the Hawks having that inside presence at both ends of the court because of where they landed with field goal percentage, but also being able to block shots effectively in that quarter.
Well, it only helped too, I believe, Tenitra, that, from a scoring standpoint, you got all 5 starters with at least 15 points on tonight. And of course, 6 players were in and scored in double figures. But, when you're able to go out there and put together a good combination of balance between offense and defense, I feel like shots were going in tonight that were just accidentally going in. You know what I mean? They couldn't intentionally miss a shot on tonight by, out shooting Orlando from every facet on the floor, every level on the floor, from 3, from the field, from the free throw line. I mean, it just appeared to have been all across the board. And great Dyson Daniels reference that you had there, who now becomes, with 62 consecutive games with at least 1 steal, I believe, breaking Doc Rivers' record for 61 consecutive. So congrats to Dyson Daniels, who really hasn't been an Atlanta Hawk for very long at all. So you really got to give him the credit. For that. And I'm just glad to see that, the team is starting to really put some stuff together. Now, if they could just play every game like the opposition is playing, wearing the Orlando Magic uniform, then that would be great. But I know that they definitely have some get back coming up this weekend against a Toronto team that opened up and kind of embarrassed them.
Yes. And so another thing that I wanted to point out that has actually been a trend we've seen this season so far as well is really good bench play, and even good on the road, by the way. So I think that speaks volumes. Of course, being back home tonight certainly helps to bolster that. But Onyeka Okongwu with a nice 14.7 rebound night. And whenever he can make 2 of 4 from 3, we got to give him a shout out. Luke Kennard pouring in 6 points, 5 points from Mogay, the Krejci with 7, Keaton Wallace with 4. The reason we mention that is because you look at essentially the 10-man rotation that Quinn Snyder used, because obviously the other players got just a minute to kind of pop in. But the 10-man rotation that he used, everyone who touched the ball actually scored. But as we always kind of look down the box score to see, every player also in that 10-man rotation had at least one rebound. So again, that speaks to us and what we're looking for, DeShaun, which is the consistency at both ends of the court, because that
Good
is
call.
how you can go on a winning streak. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking to see some of that consistency. Nice road trip. You cannot complain if you go 500 on that road trip. And now to get this win against the Magic, you're at 500 before you get ready, as you said, for revenge, hopefully on the Raptors. The Hawks Postcast is the #1 place to hang out after every game. Remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And for more on the Hawks, head over to Locked On Hawks with our guy, Brad Rowland. We'll see you next time.